Final speaker this afternoon. There was another legend. This is Mrs. Virginia Foster Durr, who's currently self-employed, but best known for her book Outside the Magic Circle. One thing I must say about Mrs. Durr is that a person in her family was instrumental in introducing the bill in 1880 to establish Tuskegee Normal Industrialist Colonel Foster. Wilbur Foster, who introduced the bill to establish Tuskegee Normal Institute.
Let's just tell how that happened. He lived the blacks were enfranchised after the Civil War was over. And he's been a Confederate soldier, but he ran in Macon County, and he asked for the black vote, and he told them if he gets the black vote, he would get them some money from the state to start Tuskegee Institute, because in Tuskegee at that time, all of the artisans were stationed. The people would come from the surrounding plantations and have carriages made and furniture made and curtains made and, dresses made. And then they had a school, female school and a male school. So he got the black vote, and he won on the black vote, and he succeeded to go to the legislature for some time until the blacks were disenfranchised. Then he got lost. So his fate depended on the black vote, and when it was withdrawn, he was also withdrawn from the legislature. But now, I'm supposed to talk about my early childhood, and he was part of it because he used to visit my grandmother. And I really had two childhoods. I had a childhood in Birmingham, Alabama, where my mother and father lived. And then I had a childhood down in Union Springs, where my grandmother lived. And then he came over to Alabama and was also a doctor. And the strange thing that he did was that he absolutely disapproved of the Civil War. He thought it was the stupidest thing that had ever happened. Said he knew we'd lose it, and that it's time to free the slaves, and that we were being very foolish indeed. So he sold everything he could, and he also got all the money he could borrow and sent it to England. So when the revolution, when the Civil War was over, he was the only man in Bullitt County that had any money. So, the Confederate money was just nothing but waste paper. And so he began to lend money to his neighbors, since he was the only man that had any money, they had to borrow from him. But he ended up owning a great deal of land. I think he ended up owning 38,000 acres of land. And then he never changed. I mean, the war was over, slavery was done away with. But he always had, there were hundreds of people on the land. There were sharecroppers all worked around the house. And so I grew up in this absolutely fantastic world, which was completely the same as it had been from before the Civil War, except everybody's work was paid. But that was really the only difference. And it was, of course, the most luxurious life you could possibly imagine. There was no running water, but there's somebody to, bring you water from the well, and there was no electric light. There's somebody to, clean the lamps, and the food was absolutely marvelous, and there was just absolute luxury and abundance because they grew their own cattle, and they grew their own sheep, and they grew their own lambs, and the food was just tremendous. And so I grew up for 7, 8 years till my grandmother died, in a completely fantasy, fairy-like world. I thought everybody loved each other, the black children and the white children played together, and as far as I could see, the black people and the white people got on very well, and it was just completely fantastic. And of course I had an extremely rude awakening, but still I do remember the 7, 8 years that I had till my grandmother died. And then after she died, things went from bad to worse because place the boll weevil came, and so whatever my father was left out of this huge plantation didn't produce anything, and he couldn't even pay he called it the furnish, get people through the winter because. And then after the boll weevil came, they sold it to Mr. Maytag. Nobody else had to buy it. He was the rich man that had the machines, Sold it for $8 an acre. I think that was just to pay the taxes. And they turned the whole big plantation into dog trials land and raising quail. when you go to the Tuskegee, now to the Union Springs, these thousands of acres are just lying there. And Mr. Maytag owns a great many of them, Mr. McLean and Mr. DuPont. And they've raised quail on them. This is some of the richest land in the whole of the United States. And they have men that live there and train dogs to hunt the quail. They come down after Christmas and stay a month or so. And I often wonder, now I say I don't think slavery was a good system, but at least at that time, people were fed, the land was used, things were grown. And now it's just a vast stretch of land with nothing on it but, bush and quail. Every single village in the county is about 90% black. Every single village office in the whole county is filled by a black man or woman. There's only a small number of white people. And the white people that live there don't own the land. It's owned by Yankee millionaires. Well, I just often wonder which is worse, a slaveman son or a Yankee millionaire. Anyway, the Yankees being down not good thing with the land, nobody's getting fed. And so I had a very happy childhood for about 7, 8 years. And as I say, all vanished. But it really had been a dream in the first place. And now what's going to happen in the future in Union Springs, I don't know. But what I do know is that I grew up for the first 7, 8 years of my life with black children and with black people, and they were the people that did for me, and the people I loved, and they loved me, and so I can't get over it. That's my trouble. I think black folks and white folks are just exactly the same. I think they're all human beings. And this is what I believe, and this is what I have tried to live by, and sometimes I get extremely discouraged. But on the whole, I do have hope that things have gotten better.